Folks, this is a very powerful tornado. May God be with all of us this afternoon and protect the lives of the citizens of the people of Pampa is my prayer. This is a very dangerous storm. Take cover at this time. This is a dangerous tornado.
Like many of the towns we've discussed on this channel in Texas, Pampa began as a small agricultural community in the twilight of the 20th century, forming around a main rail line that helped the area grow and economically thrive. By 1910, Pampa had 3 hotels, 2 banks, lumber yards, and several stores. By 1931, Pampa was incredibly profitable through oil and ranching businesses, with a 5-story business hub being built in the center of the town. And it would come as no surprise to many of you that Pampa and the Texas Panhandle in general is no stranger to severe weather. But one thing that might surprise you is just how extensive Pampa's tornado history actually is. On May 19th, 1982, Pampa saw several other tornadoes in a major tornado outbreak, of which was actually studied and surveyed by none other than Tim Marshall. Now, outside of Pampa having been hit before by another outbreak, the date itself of the Pampa, Texas F4 is of note. The day of June 8th has quite the intriguing and somewhat odd history with tornadoes. Some even go as far as to call it the curse of June 8th. So now, as June 8th, 1995 is approaching, forecasters of course are well aware of this infamous history of the date. The forecast is actually starting to look conducive to tornadoes once again. Weather in June in the southern Great Plains is characterized by exactly what you would expect. Rising temperatures in the 80s and 90s as summer approaches, and thunderstorms being pretty prevalent. June, statistically speaking, is where peak tornado and severe weather activity is typically seen in Texas. So on June 7th of 1995, when an upper low begins to center itself over the central Rockies with supporting southwestern flow and an unseasonably strong push of cold air over the United States, forecasters have their suspicions that another infamous June 8th could be in store for the southern Great Plains. In addition to this favorable kinematic setup now taking shape, high temperatures and dew points are now giving rise to explosive CAPE or energy values between 5 to 7,000 joules per kilogram. Anything past 4,000 joules per kilogram is considered extreme, and beyond that is what James Spann would consider to be a powder keg. And the ever infamous, or ever favorite, depending on how you look at it, triple point was now coming into play. Indeed, June 8th once again was looking to live up to its ever infamous status. On the morning of June 8, 1995, the oncoming cold front from the low pressure system extended from New Mexico across southern Kansas all the way through Missouri. Muggy air persisted ahead of the front with ripe dew points and temperatures in the 70s. Back further west, the dry line setup was poised from Amarillo points south, creating that ever infamous triple point. So when the forecast discussion includes the following, quote, "This really should be National Tornado Day," end quote, you know you're in for a wild ride. As the day progressed and the threat level continued to rise, severe storm chasing teams, including the VORTEX team, were gearing up to chase and conduct probe launches, which is going to be an important part of the story later on today. Local TV meteorologists and radio stations, of course, are really starting to prepare their viewing area for the potential for severe weather and tornadoes to indicate to the viewers that they need to be prepared. And I do want to explore that topic a little bit more because I think that it's really important to discuss. Rather than this narrative that is so often portrayed in tornado documentaries that people were caught off guard and the storm seemed to come out of nowhere, that's really not what happened in Pampa, Texas. A majority of the time, and I am generalizing here, the people are aware and they typically do have a plan because those people know what happens when you aren't prepared. They live in the southern Great Plains. They know all about tornadoes. So there is no narrative here of people had no earthly idea of what was going on because oftentimes for people who live in tornado-prone areas, they're very well aware. By the afternoon hours, convection began to develop in southern Kansas near the intersection of the front and outflow boundaries, moving east-southeast. Notably, however, these areas in south and western Oklahoma into the Texas Panhandle were primed for significant convective development. However, the atmosphere just to the east of them at the time where the cells were propagating was quite stable, but that was all about to change, as by 3 p.m. new convection once again begins to form off the dry line and develop into supercells that were going to progress now into the most volatile portions of the atmosphere. This time, these supercells would go on to produce multiple violent long-track tornadoes. Just after 4:20 p.m., one of the supercells that has really started to take shape that's fired off the dry line is continuing to grow in intensity as it now moves towards the outskirts of one of the communities east of Amarillo, Pampa, Texas. Rotation continues to increase on this supercell, and the NSSL office starts to see the prominent hook echo on radar, now issuing a tornado warning for the storm. A funnel cloud towers over the small town of Pampa, Texas, and finally, at 4:27 p.m., the Pampa, Texas tornado touches down in the center of the community. Storm chasers Alan Mueller, along with others who had been on the storm up until this point, have already been reporting this funnel cloud to law enforcement, who are now quickly beginning to position themselves around it to block the roads off and keep people safe.
This is a very dangerous storm. This is a dangerous storm. Take cover at this time. Take cover at this time. This is a dangerous tornado.
In the western portion of Pampa, Texas, lied the industrial regions of the town. And at 4:35 p.m., just minutes after forming, the Pampa, Texas tornado is headed directly for the industrial district.
Let's see. Okay, I want to make sure we're still on the air. We're simulcasting under emergency broadcast conditions. Folks, this is a very powerful tornado. May God be with all of us this afternoon and protect the lives of the citizens of the people of Pampa. All of the Pampa area should be taking cover at this time.
Okay, it's just right now at Craw Products, headed in towards Pampa. At Craw Products, just hit it.
I'm going to shut 60 down coming into Pampa. Coming into Pampa is approaching price now on 60.
The moment that this massive funnel begins to move over the industrial district is when it's captured on the dash cam of Gray County Sheriff Randy Stubblefield's car as he's parked along Highway 60. Here you can see a van falling from the center circulation of the tornado at what's estimated to be around 80 miles per hour. You can also see a 120-foot long warehouse roof being carried almost fully intact. And what I find intriguing about this footage, aside from the fact that it's incredibly violent motion happening and you can really see all of the detail of that, is that it's really this quiet and still scenery around the tornado juxtaposed with one of the most violent things on Earth that could physically possibly happen. Chasers here are getting pictures and videos that they could have literally only dreamed of as this tornado is moving over the industrial complex of Pampa. And not just the tornado itself, but the kind of damage that's being done. You never want to see footage of destruction happening, but it is scientifically very important to be analyzed. So this is something we saw in Andover in 1991, we've talked about on this channel, where the footage was actually some of the first high definition recordings of tornado destruction happening, and it was incredibly beneficial to the scientific community. So chasers are getting this valuable footage not only because it's intriguing to look at and to get pictures of, but also because it's scientifically relevant. And when you had teams like VORTEX out there on this day, that means that you're going to have good scientific discovery and finding and data to extrapolate from this kind of content. After moving past the industrial district, the Pampa tornado wasted no time and moved right towards Price Road and north of Alcock Street. Mercifully, the tornado at this point had began to diminish in intensity. The vast majority of the intensity and heavier damage indicators was at the industrial district, and now as it began to move towards what would have been a little bit more of a residential area, the tornado had diminished in power and intensity quite significantly. So fortunately, we didn't have to see an instance where the amount of damage that was inflicted, the violence that was inflicted on the industrial district, which is largely comprised of concrete and steel beams, we didn't have to see that carry over to homes which are made of wood and brick and so on. And after being on the ground for roughly 20 minutes and just over 3 miles, the Pampa, Texas tornado rapidly deteriorated and just as quickly as it formed, dissipated. We can't talk about the Pampa, Texas event in full without talking about the context of the other tornadoes that happened on the evening of June 8th, 1995. Incredibly, but not surprisingly, just moments after the Pampa, Texas tornado dissipated, yet another area of rotation quickly began to form, and a second, even larger tornado formed just northeast of the town, which passed by the Roof Jordan Unit Prison.
Well, it is heading right towards town. A new tornado forming to the right. To the right. A new tornado is forming to the right.
And again, from this infamous tornado outbreak, we see yet another gorgeous and honestly horrifying looking tornado. Now, this second tornado was dubbed by chasers who saw the storm as the Hoover tornado, and that was just the name of the smaller community that the tornado passed by. Now, you all know that on this channel, I usually love sticking to and talking about official data and scientific findings that I read for this channel to present to you all, but I also do enjoy a bit of, I don't want to say speculation, but we'll say inclusion of theories on this channel, because why not? I think they're a lot of fun. I spend a lot of time reading about different theories and ideas on tornadoes, and I know you guys do too, so I think it is kind of fun to explore some different ideas here. And that brings us to the discussion on the Hoover tornado, right after the Pampa twister. It is believed largely by those who have chased the storm, and by a scientific study we're going to look at here in a second, that the Hoover tornado, though it was rated an F2, was actually an F5 or was violent enough to have gotten the F5 classification. I think you all know this isn't a far-fetched idea. We've talked about this many different times, especially considering the fact that it was spawned from the same parent supercell, and it was a tornado in this exact same environment that was incredibly volatile, that produced multiple violent tornadoes. It's not far-fetched at all to believe that this had the capability of that upper echelon violent threshold. And of course, we've already talked about this a ton, that Thomas Grzoulis believed that the Pampa, Texas tornado was in the category of being an inconceivable tornado. And here's what's noted about the Hoover tornado in the Significant Tornadoes book by Thomas Grzoulis. Quote, "Rural damage in Hoover was sufficient to warrant an F2 rating, but it's noted that the tornado itself had violent potential. It just didn't hit anything." And it's also noted in the Significant Tornadoes book that the Pampa supercell spawned at least 8 tornadoes on that day. And you can kind of see that track if you look at the map of the outbreak. All right, let's talk about the other violent tornadoes spawned from these supercells. There were 2 other separate violent tornadoes that occurred on the evening of June 8th, 1995 that we're going to talk about. One near MCLEAN towards Wheeler, Texas, and the other just northeast of the small community of Allison, Texas. And to be honest, there's a lot of information to break down here, but I'm going to make it as concise as possible. To start off, the VORTEX team was not only present for the storm chase of the Pampa event and everything else that happened, they also were able to capture some incredible data. The first of the other 2 violent F4s is what I'm going to call the MCLEAN storm, and it was also rated an F4, data captured by the VORTEX team. And to set the tone for this, let me read you an excerpt from the first sentence of an abstract from a research article published on this tornado. Here it is, quote, "A detailed aerial and ground survey of a long track F5 tornado is presented." That's the first sentence. So there's no mincing of words here. The research pointed to, and some of the team members and riders believed, it was an F5. I don't think there's any more context to that. I could be missing a piece of information here, but to me, it seems pretty clear that that's what they believe. And one of the biggest reasons why many chasers and different people believe that the MCLEAN storm and the Hoover storm as well were both of that F5 intensity category is because of not only the data that was taken from the probes and different radar findings, but it was also because the chasers on that day noted asphalt that was actually stripped from the road, both on the MCLEAN storm and on the Hoover storm, which was rated an F2. So we know historically when you have asphalt that's ripped off the road like that, there's a certain level of wind speed that has to happen and friction and different things for the asphalt to get ripped off the road. So I think it's a pretty decent indicator to a lot of people that this is a lot more violent than maybe we can even really comprehend. all of the data and research articles and findings that I've read through for this event, I'm going to link in the description below. By the end of the night on June 8th, a total of 29 confirmed tornadoes had touched down through Texas, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. Now, as we shift to the aftermath and the destruction of the tornadoes, I want to talk about what I believe is the most incredible part about this entire outbreak, and that is the injuries and fatalities, or lack thereof. For this entire tornado outbreak, which again was 29 tornadoes, 3 of which were violent, there were no fatalities and there were no serious injuries. In total, there were 11 minor injuries for 29 tornadoes. That's incredible. I will note that it was discussed in some of the chaser logs from this event that there were maybe 1 or 2 chaser teams or cars that arguably were much too close to some of the twisters that were larger, the MCLEAN storm and the Allison storm, of which I think both of those were at a mile in width at their peaks. And it was noted that some chasers had gotten too close and almost hit by a satellite tornado. Fortunately, they were not, so injury or fatality was escaped. Death was escaped on this day. While there were no human fatalities, there were an upwards of 800 livestock that lost their life, which is horrible, and I cannot imagine how sad that was for the owners, and it included horses. That must have also hurt not only the family businesses but the local economy as well. As we mentioned, these were a lot of rural areas, so for 800 livestock to be lost in an outbreak is tragic and really sad, and also really a big part of the damages that are accrued at the end. Nevertheless, in terms of human impact, there were no human lives lost and no major injuries, as we discussed, and there's a lot of reasons as to why that could be. And let's discuss just a few of those. First of all, we have to acknowledge the work of the Weather Bureau offices and the NSSL at the time, who issued the forecasts that were incredible. Who did the forecasts. We also have to recognize the storm spotters and chasers who call in the funnels and really help get that advanced warning to local law enforcement and emergency management. And we also have to thank the local law enforcement who helped get the sirens on and block traffic for those that were in Pampa as well. There is a lot of mitigation that goes into these severe weather events, and they all work usually very seamlessly with one another. So that's one of the big main reasons. Another one of the main reasons we could discuss for the lack of serious injury or fatality is simply the population density of Pampa and the surrounding areas. They're quite rural, so naturally when you don't have a very dense population, you're going to have less of a chance statistically of someone losing their life in a tornado. Another major contributing factor that I do want to talk about quickly is the fact that people actually sheltered, and this is a big one, and it's very multifaceted. Tommy Murray was one of the survivors in the storm of the Pampa, Texas event in the industrial sector working at Howard Compressor, and he attested to the fact that people were sheltering because himself and his coworkers went straight to the bathroom when they got the tornado warning, and the tornado struck the building, shaking it. And generally, I would also be inclined to attribute the fact that people weren't injured to the fact that a lot of the population, as we mentioned, is weather aware and actually takes those warnings seriously. Good forecasting and good severe weather coverage means absolutely nothing if people aren't willing to shelter when they get those warnings. You could be the best meteorologist in the world, and if you don't have an audience that actively listens to those warnings, doesn't matter. So you have to commend the people of Pampa and the surrounding regions and the locals of the Texas Panhandle generally for being weather aware and for actually taking action when it matters. I really love the fact that over the course of this channel, I've talked to a lot of people who live in these areas that are very much in tune with their area. They're very much in tune with nature and the severe weather patterns. And whether this be from Native American culture or just generally how people in the Great Plains are with severe weather, I find it really fascinating just how intuitive a lot of these people are when it comes to severe weather days, and they take nature very seriously and they're not going to mess around with it. They respect the nature a lot more. This is something I've kind of noticed, that people who live in the plains really respect the nature around them and the threats that it poses. So I don't know, I thought that's kind of interesting. Let's talk about the damage that was inflicted on Pampa specifically. The tornado left a 3-mile long damage path across the town, which included about 250 homes and largely businesses that were damaged or destroyed. This resulted in a monetary loss of around $30 million, which is not a small amount, but again, we have to consider that a lot of this was industrial areas. Because most of the damage was inflicted to businesses, they were able to get more government assistance and get those buildings rebuilt fairly quickly because they had the assistance of the government behind them. And this is a lot better of a situation than we normally discuss on this channel, which is usually people losing their homes and having nowhere to sleep. I would much prefer this discussion where there's no fatalities and no real residential destruction. Let's talk about the rating. The Pampa, Texas tornado was given an F4 rating. It is a violent rating. Is there going to be someone out there that claims it's an F5? Absolutely. We don't have to go over the debate thing again. We've already touched on it in other parts of this video. I honestly, at this point, don't know if there has ever been an F4 or EF4 rating that we've discussed on this channel that has ever not been challenged by somebody. If there is an F4 or an EF4 tornado that's been rated out there that's completely uncontested, let me know what it is. I would love to talk about it because I don't think it exists at this point. I'm convinced it doesn't exist. Pampa in 2012 became a storm-ready community, which is a voluntary program that a community will choose to participate in, and it essentially is a program that allows for a more proactive approach to handling severe weather. It includes weather awareness education programs. There are certain criteria that must be met for a community to be a storm-ready community, of which includes having an EOC. It also includes having trained weather spotters, and it also includes holding emergency exercises. And this was great timing, and it was a great addition in 2012 that they did, because 3 years later in 2015, Pampa, Texas was hit with yet another tornado. This tornado struck in November of 2015 and was an EF3, definitely a strong tornado, part of a larger November outbreak. The overall population of Pampa, Texas, if you look at the charts, is pretty much stagnant. And I don't know why that is. I'm not a local to Pampa. Maybe somebody who's familiar with the area could give me some insight to that. So we discussed the peak of the Pampa population, according to the census, is around 20,000 residents. In 2021, Pampa was accounted for having just over 16,000 residents. I don't know the full story. I would be interested to know if any of you have some guidance for me there, some context for me there, but it seems like a pretty typical rural town that's just not really grown very much. Maybe there's not any additions to anything. Maybe it's an older generation population that's living there. So could be any of those things, really. Overall, I want to talk a little bit about my thoughts on the Pampa, Texas tornado, but more generally on tornadoes that are violent but not deadly. Normally on this channel, I am typically pretty solemn, and we have to talk a lot about death and destruction and loss of property and life, and it's a very difficult thing to sit here and discuss my love of tornadoes like this one and have that juxtaposed with the violence and death that goes along with them. It's kind of a fine line to balance, And I want to express that while I typically do always have heavier discussions where we have to talk about loss of life, there's also, I think, a space on this channel and just generally where we can really enjoy and appreciate tornadoes, even nasty looking ones like this one, the Washburn, Illinois EF3, and just appreciate them for what they are, even though they might be really unsightly and ugly, but not deadly. And that's exactly what the Pampa, Texas tornado was, and that's exactly what the Washburn EF3 tornado was. This really beautiful, horrifying looking storm that we can awe at and really appreciate. That's ultimately my goal on this channel, to find a line where we can appreciate the storms like this one and learn more about them and just be in awe of Mother Nature and the things that it can do, while also simultaneously being very cognizant of the fact that these storms are killers and that they take families away and that they take homes away. And so I want to be careful when I say this, but I hope you understand my sentiment when I say I think that the Pampa, Texas tornado is strikingly beautiful, but also take a second to recognize that it caused a lot of hardships to families that lost their livestock and businesses that had to take time to rebuild, and people who might have been emotionally traumatized by that storm. After all that, and I know that I tend to ramble on about these storms, I would love to know what you all think about this storm in particular, or about any of the concepts that we've sort of explored today, what you all think about those. I really enjoyed reading about the Pampa, Texas tornado, but more generally the other tornadoes from this outbreak as well. I have for a long time been focused on tornadoes of the 20th century. However, I think in the year 2024, I'm going to make a shift towards the sort of more popular videos that you guys want to see, some events that have happened in recent history, whether it be from the 2011 super outbreak or more recent events as well in the 2020s. So I have plenty of recommendations to work with. I see and hear you guys when you give me a recommendation. I really appreciate them. I hope I can get to all of them eventually. So just be patient with me. I will work very hard on them. I think that's all I really have to say today. I think I've probably said everything and nothing all at once, but I appreciate you if you made it this far. Thank you so much. I'm really excited for 2024 and what the year brings, and I just want to say thank you. Special thank you to the members of this channel. You all are so much fun and I love you, and thank you so much for your support. It means a lot. If you're watching this video and you want to support me, you don't have to. You might not like me, that's okay. You can go to twostorms.co if you want to support my small business and get any of the merch, mugs, earrings, stickers, different things that are over there. We still have hoodies available for the meantime, and shirts, of course. So you could support me that way. If not, you can also just like and comment on this video. If you are interested in following my social medias, I'll have those linked below too, just in case you want to see any of that. There are a lot of Blaze pictures that go up on my socials. So, oh, if you guys can't see, I have a picture of baby Blaze if you guys want to see. Here he is. I think he was just a few weeks old at this time. Look at how cute. And here he is again when he was, I don't know, maybe 6 months old or a year old. Blaze is 12 now. He's becoming an elder at this point, so we have to respect his time because he has to sleep a lot more these days. Anyways, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being part of this channel, and look forward to a lot more in 2024. I will see you guys next time. Bye.